Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so delighted to introduce you today to my guest, Dorie Clark. Dorie helps individuals and companies get their best ideas heard in a crowded, noisy world. She has been named one of the top 50 business thinkers in the world by Thinkers 50. She was honored as the #1 communication coach in the world by the Marshall Goldsmith Leading Global Coaches Awards and one of the top 50 communication professionals in the world by Global Gurus. Dorie is a keynote speaker and teaches executive education for Duke University's Fuqua School of Business and Columbia Business School. She is the author of Entrepreneurial You, as well as Reinventing You and Stand Out, which was named the #1 leadership book of the year by Inc. magazine. Dorie has been described by the New York Times as an expert at self-reinvention and helping others make changes in their lives. I can testify to that because I am one of those people. She is a frequent contributor to the Harvard Business Review, and you can download her free Entrepreneurial You self-assessment workbook at dorieclark.com/entrepreneur. Please join me in welcoming Dorie Clark. Hey, Dorie.
Hey, Tammy. Good to be speaking with you.
Yes, thank you so much for being here today. So, Dorie, as you know, work from the inside out. It's all about the transitions we make in our lives through our work and careers. I know you've made a lot of different transitions over the years, many of them very meaningful to you. But take us back to the early years, maybe even, your childhood. Did you have dreams as a child of what you wanted to be when you grew up, or what were the early years like for you?
Well, first I wanted to be a spy. That didn't work out. I really love James Bond. I thought that was probably the most exciting thing possible. I definitely was interested in figuring out how to build a time machine. Back to the Future was pretty cool. I did not gain a lot of traction with that either.
Okay.
But one
Did you try?
I bought some screws at a hardware store, but then I couldn't figure out quite what to do with them, so it sort of fizzled. But what I did do actually that I have ended up doing quite a bit of is writing. When I was a kid, I was always writing stories, and I went to a writer's camp when I was a kid, and I remember my parents would go to the beach. We had a beach house, and I know, lots of people like the idea of a beach house. Like, this is like a kind of coveted thing in middle class life. I just freaking hated the beach house. I thought it was the most boring thing in the world. I did not want to go to the beach. I did not want to be at the beach house. And so the only way that I could get through these incredibly boring stints of time with my parents at the beach house was I would demand that my mother buy me a copy of a book that, I don't even know if they sell them anymore, but they were these big, thick books called The Writer's Market. And the Writer's Market, they were these big things that would tell you all the places you could submit your writing. And so, like as a 12-year-old or like an 11-year-old, you were not qualified to submit to any of them. But nonetheless, I was captivated with the idea of getting published. And so I would just pour over it, and I would write all kinds of stories and things like that because I dreamed of being able to submit things.
So were you, at that age, were you writing like fiction, like creative writing and imaginative stories, things like that?
Mostly it was fiction. Yeah, I didn't have enough subject matter knowledge to really be doing useful nonfiction.
So did you get anything published?
Not really. I mean, I always cleaned up at my like middle school literary journal,
Oh, okay.
but no, I did. I was the 12-year-old that was like sending poems to the New Yorker.
Oh,
Shockingly, they were not interested in any of them. But
really?
yeah, so surprising. I don't know what was wrong with their critical acumen there,
I don't
but I
know.
tried.
Well, I'm impressed that as a 12-year-old, you knew what the New Yorker was. So,
Well, thank you.
so from a 12-year-old sending pieces to the New Yorker, where did you take your career from there?
Well, it all sort of went on hold a little bit when I was in college and grad school, just kind of blitzing through that. But I ended up going to grad school to Harvard Divinity School, and I got a master's of theological studies there.
Mhm.
And when I graduated, my first job out of school was working as a political reporter in Boston at a weekly newspaper. And unfortunately, for me at the time, I mean, the good news, I guess, is it sort of kicked off all the other things that I did, but I got laid off from that position right before September 11th. 2001. Specifically, it was September 10th, 2001. I got laid off, and it was a little alarming having to figure out how to find a job in the midst of all of that. But that kind of kicked me off on my first reinvention journey.
That's quite a double whammy. Although here we are recording this right in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is, of course, another noteworthy time in our history, so to speak. Let's hope this is history. I just want to go back for a moment, though. When you went to college, did you go right from college into grad school? Or were there any other work experiences before that? Anything else formative that sort of, because I'm thinking divinity school to political writer. How did that translation occur?
Well, I did go straight from undergrad into graduate school. I part of the reason that I wanted to do that and not take time off was I had gone to college early. I had sort of booked it out of my little town and gone to college when I was 14, and so I graduated when I was 18.
Yeah.
So I didn't necessarily feel like entering the workforce when I was 18. I still felt like,
Yeah.
okay, this could be a little weird, like somehow figuring out how to make friends with all these people that are way older than me. So I figured I would continue on with my education, and
Yeah.
divinity school seemed interesting. I had been a philosophy major as an undergrad.
Okay.
And so theology was kind of a close cousin. And I was very interested in politics and advocacy. And in fact, studying religion was part of that because I was interested in how religion was playing out in American public life. At the time, I was very morbidly fascinated with the Christian Coalition and all of the what I considered frightening things they were trying to do, and so I wanted to understand that a little bit better. And I thought that if I went to divinity school and studied essentially the kind of history and sociology of American religion, which is what I ended up focusing on, that I would have a better grasp.
And so did did it whet your appetite for that knowledge that you were looking for?
I did manage to figure out. I guess I got what I came for in that regard. I did learn a lot about how the pieces fit together. I just wanted to, you know, be able to trace back the culture a little bit more, and so I think it was helpful in putting those pieces together. And so I had been very passionate about politics and done a lot of political advocacy in college. I
Uh-huh.
continued that in grad school. And actually, when I was in college, I had managed to talk my way onto the board of directors of something called the Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund, now just known as the
Wow.
Victory Fund, which is basically a political action committee for openly LGBT candidates.
Uh-huh.
And I had really no business being on the board as a college student because I couldn't give them any money. But what I did to try to justify my presence in some way was to start volunteering on campaigns of candidates that they had endorsed. And
Wow.
so I ended up, there were lots of people in the Boston area where I was living that they had endorsed. So I ended up getting a lot of experience on campaigns and meeting a lot of people. And so as a result of that, I had a pretty good resume of being involved in campaigns, and that ended up helping me get a job as a political reporter because they knew that I sort of understood the beat and had contacts there.
I see. So that really helps to kind of connect some of the dots in terms of, and this is exactly the kind of thing that I know you teach people and that I teach people in terms of how do you advance yourself in whatever you're trying to do, making those relationships, making those connections, but also clearly you were following things that you were passionate about, interested in, and tying in your love of writing with your interest in politics and social justice and all of those things. Sounds like you were in the right place at the time. Unfortunately, then getting laid off on September 10th, uncanny. And I know that was just such a striking experience for you. I can imagine what it must have been like when you woke up on September 11th, knowing what was going on in our country then.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was terrifying, of course, for me. Just the way it was for everybody else, because we didn't know what was happening and
Yeah.
the scale or the scope of it. I also had a little bit of Schadenfreude. I was like, there, you stupid people, could have kept me on an extra day. Would have been helpful for you, huh?
Yeah, really. Like I could have been really helpful right now. Yeah, yeah,
You wish you had another pair of hands. Too bad.
really.
But
So how did you navigate from that point forward? I mean, you were still, kind of. How long had you been at the paper at that point?
I had only been there for a year, so I was kind of the junior person. I was the last hired and the first out, and so that was why they were just so generous. I mean, these people are now out of business. I wonder why, but they because I had been there a year, they decided that what I was entitled to was 1 week of severance pay. And so I had already worked a day, meaning that Monday. So they gave me a check on my way out the door for 4 days pay. And I'm like, okay, here you go.
Oh,
And that's what I had. So the answer to your excellent question of what I did was I had to scramble for work because I did not, I was 22 years old. I had just finished graduate school. It wasn't like I had a lot of savings. And these really, very, very cheap people sent me out with 4 days pay. So I had to figure something out very fast. And so,
yeah.
for
And
better or for worse.
The world was standing still the next
Yeah,
day.
it was a pretty terrifying time to be looking for work. So and I couldn't get work basically. I mean, I had to. I was trying to get hired, but of course, everywhere had a hiring freeze. So I ended up freelancing for about 6 months, and that actually was good training. I mean, that's the good part of it is that I did not think of it this way at the time, and I didn't really realize that this is what it was training for, but it was really training to be an entrepreneur because at a very visceral level, being a freelance writer is exactly being an entrepreneur. You have to understand with absolute certainty what your customer, meaning the editor, will be interested in, and you must deliver it quickly and you must sell it, pitch it to them and sell it to them. And you do that over and over and over again until you develop an instinctive sense of what the customer wants. And if you don't get what the customer wants, then you are not going to get the deal and you are not going to get your rent money. And so it became a very high stakes version of me learning to pivot and adapt and all the skills that an entrepreneur needs to have.
So, so 6 months of freelancing, and then what happened, Dorie?
And then what happened was I ended up joining a political campaign. So I had been continuing to just, think about okay, I'm going to keep freelancing until I can get hired full time at the Globe. And they told me they were interested. I kept hearing from people, "Oh, we like you, we want to. Oh, but just a few more months. We've got this hiring freeze." But I was wondering how long the hiring freeze would go on, and they kind of kept pushing it back. And I got a call in the interim from a guy that I knew, and he had just come on as a consultant to Robert Reich, who is running for governor of Massachusetts. He was the former labor secretary. And he asked if I was interested in being considered for a press secretary job. And at first I said no, because I was really intent on staying a journalist. But I realized that it was a big opportunity. I mean, Bob Reich entering the race was kind of a big deal. He was a celebrity entering the race. And I thought, this is probably a really good opportunity. And I probably should not turn it down in favor of waiting around for a thing that may or may not happen. So I called them back and I said, yeah, actually I would like to be considered. And so I ended up starting that job in March. So about 6 months after my layoff from the Phoenix.
Oh, wow. Wow. So, so that was even though it was related territory, I assume there was some new territory in that as well.
For sure. Yes. I had not been on that side before. I mean, I had, as I mentioned, I had volunteered in politics before, and I'd done a little bit. I had managed a state rep race, but it was sort of the world's easiest state rep race because he was unopposed. Oh. I had to basically I handled fundraising. We would have events, and people would give him money for his unopposed race was sort of the deal. So there was a little bit of managing the press, but not a lot.
Yeah.
So being a press secretary in a very competitive governor's race, was a 5-way governor's race.
Yes, I remember it.
Yeah, was a different magnitude. So it was kind of high octane to learn to do that.
Yeah. So, we know how it turned out.
Yes. For our non-Massachusetts listeners, he lost.
He's a winner in our eyes, though.
That's right.
So, but what an amazing experience, right?
It was very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So once a campaign like that is over, though, everybody kind of packs up their bags and goes home, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the campaign ended after about what would it be? Like probably another 6 months actually, because he lost in the primary.
Okay.
So ultimately, there were five Democrats in the race. He lost, and I believe came in second to the eventual nominee, who then in turn lost to Mitt Romney, who also has gone on to an interesting subsequent career.
Yes.
So after the Reich campaign ended, I had to continue freelancing, pick up another job. So I started consulting a few days a week at a PR firm in Boston, and just knocking around doing the things they needed. I would write press releases or help draft op-eds, things like that. Just a little bit of work to bring in money while I was figuring out my next thing. And what I really wanted my next thing to be was working on a presidential campaign.
I see.
And so I was trying very hard to get in. You have to work a million angles. I mean, there's not a very clear path to getting on a presidential campaign, so you just have to network like a fiend. But I did, and I eventually was able to get hired on with the Howard Dean campaign, which is where I spent most of 2003 and part of 2004.
So, and when you say network like a fiend, I have this image of you doing just that. I can imagine you doing it. And so with the Howard Dean campaign, you were also working as a spokesperson. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And so that was about a year and a half or a 2-year engagement for you?
With the Dean campaign, it was a little bit less. His, I don't think he really could have afforded staff for that long because when he started out, he was so obscure. So I ended up working for him from about April of 2003 to January, February, right, basically after the New Hampshire primary of 2004.
I see. So. Was it everything you hoped it would be? How did that work out for you, I guess?
Yeah, it was a fantastic learning opportunity. I mean, it was so incredibly intense. People ask sometimes. I mean, not not really right now in the middle of the pandemic, but back before before Biden became the nominee, and when there were a million interesting candidates who were in the race for 2020. People would ask sometimes, "Oh, do you want to get back in politics, or do you miss being in politics?" And I always had a pretty emphatic answer, which is no, no, I don't. I was very glad that I did it, but it's an extraordinarily intense thing to do, and it's just terribly draining. And so what often happens, I mean, they say, politics is a game for the young, and I don't like to sort of put myself in the camp of people who are like too old and lazy, because I'm pretty much not lazy, but
definitely not that.
but nonetheless, the campaign was hard living. We had a every single day we had a staff meeting that kicked us off at 8 a.m. that we had to be there for, and on weeknights we worked until 9. The office would close sometime a little bit after. I mean, actually, I don't think the office ever really closed, but typically people would go home at about 9, and then on Saturday and Sunday it was like our big day off, and then we would work from 9 a.m. rather than 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. So we were working 7 days a week, and for during the weekdays 13 hours a day. I mean, it was just so high stress. I remember I was sick. I got a cold, and I just kept being sick and kept being sick. And I ended up being sick for like 2 months because I didn't have time to go to the doctor. I just literally didn't have time to go to the doctor. And it turns out, I was kind of dumb. I needed antibiotics, and I was just like, oh, it'll get better. But I needed antibiotics. And, once I took them, my cold cleared up. But for 2 months, I'm just like hacking because I was sick and couldn't do anything about it. But you literally feel like you don't have time to go to the doctor. You feel like you don't have time to go to the bathroom because there is such a crush of expectations and people needing things. And you feel like everything that you're doing, I mean, rightly or wrongly, you have this sort of megalomaniacal, like, it is of world historic import. I must do this. So it's not a world that once you leave, you typically want to re-enter, because it was just like, oh my God, that was insane.
I can relate, having worked in the political realm myself in an earlier part of my career. I know.
Yeah, tell me what you did, Tammy.
Well, wait a minute. I'm not. Who's interviewing him? Well, I worked in the mayor's office in Boston for 4 years.
And that was Menino?
No, it was Flynn, actually.
Oh, look at you and your street cred.
And so I was on his staff, but we used to get pulled into different campaigns as a member of the staff.
So what did you do for the mayor?
I worked in a few capacities. My first job there was as the assistant to his advisor on human services and public health. So I worked with that person for about a year. And then I moved over to what was known as the Emergency Shelter Commission. And I worked with a number of different people there, but mostly interfacing with homeless services providers, hunger all the uplifting topics on hunger and poverty and homelessness, affordable housing. We were taking abandoned property. I mean, I was not personally taking these properties, but I was working and interfacing with all the different city departments that were taking, a variety of abandoned properties and turning them into all kinds of transitional housing. And so everything from getting people off the streets to then developing all kinds of programs. And we were getting, at that time, huge amounts of federal funds called McKinney funds that there was money pouring into Boston to provide all these programs and create all these programs.
Yeah. Did you work with Susan Tracy?
I worked very closely with Susan Tracy, and
she was one of the campaigns that I volunteered on because she was endorsed by the Victory Fund.
Oh, okay. So, yes, I worked on her campaign a little bit. I would show up at her campaign office a little bit. Yes, so I worked with Susan when she was the head of the Shelter Commission for a while. So, yep, I worked with Susan, and I'm sure I bet you and I would have a very long list of people that we would both know. So worked on all those issues and I used to, for several years in a row, wrote the city's position paper on homelessness and hunger, and produced that. And also was one of the people who helped start the overnight census count of the homeless, where we used to go out in the middle of the night and literally go out in the street and count so that we could get a sense of literally how many people are in shelter and how many people are literally out on the street. And we would cover the entire city, and we would stay up till 3 or 4 in the morning, feeding everyone donuts and making sure that we knew we were going into subway tunnels and out to the airport and everywhere looking for people and making sure they had a place to go.
That's amazing. That always struck me as extremely logical to do that, albeit logistically challenging, but impressive.
Had a pretty good system going there with that. I think they still do it. I don't know if they still do it now, but they did it for many years after I left. But as part of being a part of that, I was often pulled away from the office to help with the Dukakis campaign or help with this campaign or that campaign. So it wasn't just a job, it was a life. It was a lifestyle, let's say.
Yes.
So when you talk about the hours and the commitments went way beyond everything. And so I really got a really good taste of both policy work, but also politics. And
that's great. It's great training. That's really interesting.
And so I realized it's time for me to work for myself. So a few years out from that experience, I started working for myself. So,
yeah, I quickly discovered that I operated so much better when I was in control.
Yes, me too. And happier, just happier. Happy all over the place.
Amen, Tammy.
Okay, so back to you. So after the presidential campaign and the 24/7 kind of schedule, what did you set your sights on from that experience?
Well, at that point, I decided after politics that I wanted to. I was pretty cause-based, I guess you could say. I had a lot of things that I cared about.
Yeah.
So I decided that I wanted to either run a small nonprofit or be the head of communications of a large nonprofit. That was my goal. And so I came back after the Dean campaign ended and started applying to things. And what I ended up doing was getting hired as the executive director of a very small nonprofit. It was called the Massachusetts Bicycle Coalition. And so I was in charge of the statewide super powerful bicycle lobby.
So it was like a lobbying organization, or?
I mean, in a very, very tiny way. But yeah, the kinds of things that we did, we would, I say kind of lobby in air quotes. I mean, there was a little bit of that, but we would work, for instance, with Mass Highway to try to get roadways designed to be more bicycle friendly,
Uh-huh.
because they would build these roads, and it would be like, you just like, a human could not bicycle on these roads. Like, it's just
Right.
structurally impossible. And we're like, what if you built it so that someone could? maybe,
Right.
maybe they might.
Right.
So we would do that. Would provide technical assistance around roadway design. We would work with the MBTA around bicycle access on buses, getting bike racks on
Oh,
buses,
wow. Yeah.
or about the policy changes around having bikes on the T, which is the subway system in Boston.
Right.
Or we would work with the Department of Conservation and Recreation around the creation of bike paths around the state. So all of those types of things.
And I bet the hours in that job were a little better.
They were, but the interesting thing that I discovered was that the hours were better, but the stress was higher because I was responsible for the fate of this organization. And we had a board, as one does, but this was not a fundraising board. It was like a bunch of kind of ragtag advocates. And a few people kind of had a sense of how things normally work on boards, but most of them did not. And if we were going to keep this organization alive, I had to figure out how to keep it alive. And we had employees, and it was just a huge, enormous stressor to me, carrying the weight of that.
Yes.
And so I would, I when I was on the Howard Dean campaign, it was stressful. There was a lot of things to manage. And I would sometimes be awakened in the middle of the night because, like, a reporter would call my cell phone at 2:00 in the morning. But with Mass Bike, I would literally wake up, in a start and be like, "Oh my God, how are we going to pay our employees?" And I'd have to figure out how we were going to do it. But I was very proud. I had to learn a lot of things. You had to really be a jack of all trades for that. So it prepared me, I think, well for entrepreneurship. And I felt very good that we left it on stable footing, because the last sort of big thing that I insisted that we do before I left was we embarked upon a very aggressive direct mail campaign, which we had never done before. And we were able to double the size of the membership base, so that we were able to create something kind of more lasting to be able to bequeath to my successor.
Wow. So, I'm hearing all these different things that you did, and I know there's even more. And how all of these were kind of good proving grounds for you for entrepreneurship, no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It didn't, I never thought about working for myself. I mean, not at all. But it came to me about a year into working for Mass Bike. I was like, I just had this sort of sudden, powerful realization. I'm like, oh my God, like running this little small nonprofit and having to do all the different things, learn all the different pieces.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is just like running my own business. And then I'm like, oh my God, I could run my own business.
That's sort of the first time that it really occurred to you that maybe that might be a good idea.
Yeah, for sure. It was the first time. And so I spent the next year, I was at Mass Bike for 2 years. So I spent the second year sort of plotting it out and figuring, educating myself about what it would take to start a business and eventually transition into that.
Really? And what were your thoughts about what that would look like initially? Because I'm guessing it looked different when you started than what it looks like now.
Yeah, well, my original vision actually was that I was going to start a business doing political consulting. That was the thought, because it was the thing that I had come from most recently, and I thought I had these sort of role models of people that I knew who were political consultants and they were making a good living, and I thought, oh, I could do that. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, once I launched and I sort of told people, hey, I'm on my own now, I didn't get any political clients right away. That was just not popping. But I had a lot of kind of random like small businesses and nonprofits and stuff that were like, oh, hey, we want to hire you. And I was not dumb. I was happy to take their money. So I'm like, okay, great. I guess I'll be a communications consultant and let's do that.
So you started your business, and it started out with people you knew in the Boston area who were needing your services. These were people you knew, and they were taking advantage of no one was taking advantage of anybody. Let's be clear about that. But you said, I'm hanging up my shingle, I'm open for business, and people were asking for your help in a variety of areas in communications, possibly with some political areas. And you've been in business for yourself ever since. Is that right?
Yeah, that was a good quick summary. I like it. Yes, that takes us to the present.
And I know that, but now things are looking quite different. You've written 3 books, and you are working with a lot of entrepreneurs, but also working with larger organizations, business schools, corporations. You do a tremendous amount of speaking all over the world. So your reach has really, your audience and your reach has changed quite significantly from the little village of Boston to now you live in Manhattan. And other than the last, let's say, month and a half, you're flying all over the world and really reaching a global audience. So take us to where you are today, and what gives you the greatest reward or pleasure in terms of what you're doing now, and how you are how you're helping so many people, Dorie. I just want to hear it from you.
Well, thank you, Tammy. I appreciate it. Yeah, in terms of the thing that I like best, I get asked that question sometimes because I, as you alluded to, I do a lot of things, sort of deliberately. My last book, Entrepreneurial You, is about how do you create multiple streams of income in your business, and so it's kind of a philosophy of mine that I try to do a lot of things and package my intellectual property in different ways, whether it's books or speaking or online courses or coaching or business school teaching, that sort of thing. I would say that, on kind of a minute per minute basis, the speaking actually is, I guess, unfortunately at the moment, because I'm not doing a lot of it, but the speaking actually is really fun in the sense that it is so nice to see people's reaction in real time and to just, get in sort of a flow state and vibe with the audience and see that they're liking it and that they're, that the message is resonating.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to be philosophical about it because the travel is really hard. I spend a lot of the time on the road, flying around, and I I have a terrible problem with motion sickness, and so taxi cabs are like these cabs to the airport are like my nemesis,
Yeah.
and it's a little better now.
You have a good solution for that, haven't you?
I do. In the last year, I have these little funny glasses that look like bizarre portholes with blue liquid in them. I look like such a weirdo, but they actually do help with motion sickness. So that it's not perfect, but it helps a lot. So that is definitely better. But so not being able to travel, I am trying to look on the bright side that the travel was always hard. The speaking part was fun, but the travel was hard.
Yeah.
So now I'm just focusing my time on other things. And fortunately, writing is fun for me.
Yeah.
And it's, so I do articles and, books, of course. But there's a lot of great ways that I'm able to connect with people now. I mean, there's my Recognized Expert course, of which you are a member, and we have a very active, ongoing community with a course and monthly webinars and things like that. So I feel like I'm not lacking for interesting people to connect with and relate to, even when we're in lockdown.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, it's been wonderful, the community that you've engaged there under the Recognized Expert course and the ongoing community, and the way that that group really engages with one another has been absolutely amazing. I can say that for myself. And then, with all the books that you've written, how much that community, we've all read the books, and we've all, I think, learned so much. And I think that's the other thing, that you're a teacher. You teach, but you also set an example. That's something that I think you bring to the world that makes a big, big difference. So whether you're speaking, coaching, we didn't mention your coaching, but you do have a lot of one-on-one coaching clients that you also work with. Those are all things that you do regularly. I'm curious, though, in terms of your, sort of social movements and things like that. It sounds like those things, I know you're still active socially and politically, but it sounds like those are things that you do on a more personal level at this point. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I would say that that's accurate. I mean, ultimately, when I think about sort of, I'll say in air quotes, public messaging or things like that. I mean, sometimes I had an interview with a podcaster actually, a while back, and he was saying, oh, I really feel like in the current environment, it's my responsibility to speak out and, about the way things are. And I totally respect that. But for me, the way that I think about it is, people who, for instance, have signed up for my email list or who are following me online, that's not what they signed up for.
That's right.
What they signed up for is the business writing that I do. That's what I've established my brand around.
Right.
And so we may or may not share a political philosophy. I hope we do, because I think I'm right. But but nonetheless, I mean, does anyone really care what Dorie Clark thinks about immigration policy? I mean, not really. I'm not even sure I care what I think about immigration policy. I am not the expert here.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like oftentimes when people are, aside from people who are legitimate experts, but when a regular person is sort of opining publicly, I feel like they're often doing it for their own benefit, or just sort of venting, or like, I'm so mad about blah, blah, blah. That's stupid. Right. And I don't really want to be part of that type of conversation. I want to be part of conversation at a higher level. Yeah. And so I feel like when I feel like I can make a legitimate contribution to a conversation, I will contribute. When I feel like it's in my area of expertise and I can say, no, really, I have good facts. I have good information about this. I want to be helpful. But if we're veering into things that I have less knowledge about, then I want to defer to other people and not really be part of the noise. But there are things where, when I can be helpful, I try to. I mean, for instance, I think about another podcast run by a friend of mine named Jordan Harbinger. He actually he did a guest webinar for the Recognized Expert community actually a while back. So you can access that in your course materials, Tammy, if you're interested. But Jordan has a very popular podcast, and he had me on last week, actually, as of the time that we're recording this, because he had a question come in. Like every Friday, he has like his question box kind of thing. And he had a question come in from a listener of his who was, of all things, a 13-year-old girl who was coming out, and she was worried about it because her family is conservative and her friends are all, friends have told her like, oh, they don't like gay people and they won't be friends with gay people. And she was worried about that. And so he being a straight guy, a straight married guy, he's like, I don't know if I'm the most qualified to answer this. And so he reached out to me and he's like, Dorie, will you be the guest answerer about this girl's question? And so I appeared on his podcast and sort of gave my advice to her. And so I was glad to be able to help with something like that. And, I try to plug in where I can, but I feel like there's a lot of different ways that people can make contributions. And right now, at least, the place that I'm focused is, really around the work that I do, with the courses and things like that. I mean, sort of the premise of the recognized expert community is let's take talented, smart people and get their voices heard. I want the best voices to be heard, not just the loudest voices. And if we can equip smart, competent people to know how to break through the noise in a productive way, then I feel like that's kind of a mitzvah in its own way.
Yeah. Oh, I love the way you said mitzvah. I love it.
Thank you.
So we will wrap up now. You've been wonderful, Dorie, and I appreciate all your time today. Leave us with maybe a tidbit of advice for people who are thinking about their next steps. And what kinds of things would you say are the most important things for someone who is considering their next step or a transition?
Yeah, absolutely, Tammy. So if someone is thinking about their next step and trying to map that out, I would say that the quick thing to keep in mind is that we often think about reinvention as kind of a one-time thing, kind of it's this big break, this big fissure in our lives. And I think that sometimes what can make it easier or more manageable is to think of it as what I call lowercase r reinvention, meaning, is there a way that we can actually just be making small changes and small tweaks regularly so that it's not such a huge, titanic kind of experience, but instead that we just keep pushing ourselves in small ways so that we are ready to pivot when we need to. And I'll also mention, just in case it's a helpful tool, I have a reinvention self-assessment. Yes. And if people would like to get it for free, they can get it at DorieClark.com/reinvent.
Great. Thank you so much. And how can people best find you in general?
Yes, thank you, Tammy. Well, in general, my website, DorieClark.com, has more than 700 free articles available on there that I've written for places like Harvard Business Review and Forbes and Entrepreneur. And of course, lots of free tools like the reinvention self-assessment at DorieClark.com/reinvent.
Yeah. Thank you, Dorie. Thank you so much again. You've given us a lot to think about, and I appreciate your time today so much.
Thanks, Tammy. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Dorie Clark. Even though I have known her for over 3 years, there were parts of her story that were new to me. It was really fun to learn more about her. Dorie is an extraordinary person and leader, and she has had a profound impact on my professional journey. What is your key takeaway from our interview? Is there something you'll put into action that you'll benefit from in the days to come? If you are curious to learn more about Dorie's Recognized Expert course or any of her other outstanding offerings, you can find all the links and resources we discussed in the show notes at www.tammygoulerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 076. If you were inspired by this episode with Dorie, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. Just click on the Apple Podcast button or follow the instructions provided there on my website. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows, maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.